Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we've got another top 16 breakdown for my second FB05 tournament, another FB05 triple winner box for the Fusion World card game. And this was held last night. It was live stream as well, so if you guys want to see the live stream, you can find that linked in the description. And honestly, it was a really good time. I'm happy that a lot of people came out for it. I'm happy that we're able to cap again on a Tuesday night, and I know a lot of people, including myself, are really enjoying this format for this card game too. So a couple of things before we get started. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're making a lot of Fusion World content, including the end of the month where you have our first like big in-person event for it in California, where I live, so I will be there, so it should be really exciting. And then also, if you guys need any of the deck lists we're talking about today or others, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events, which is linked in the description. We do a lot of data here. I did another event at the beginning of the format, and I've been collecting deck lists from the first anniversary for you guys to check out if you haven't already. So make sure to do that, and I appreciate you guys supporting the website as well. But jumping on into it, we do have again a 64 player event, 6 rounds of Swiss into this top 16 of 3 copies of the Star Deck Daima, 2 copies of Jiren, 2 copies of the green FB05 Goku, 2 Janemba, 1 Vegito, 1 Majin Buu Evil, 1 Aandroidd 17, a Beerus, an FB05 Blue Goku, the FB05 version of Son Goku Mini Daima, and 1 Gogeta as well. So of a top 16, we see 11 different leaders, which I think is really impressive and just kind of shows again a lot of different decks that are pretty viable in this format in general. And you can see the total leaders, a good amount of diversity with that as well. The game's just good. I don't know what to say. I know that there's some like minor, I'd say, annoying interactions, and there are some times where like some matchups are just very skewed because of it, but by and large, for a game like this size, I think it has a lot of different variety, which is really cool to see. Especially, you're going to know because we're going to go over a bunch of deck lists from this event too. So again, if you guys want to see any of these decks in particular, you can find them linked in the description as well. But we're just going to go through these leaders as we have them. We're going to start off with their first place list, which is going to be the Vegito from Luke as well. So this is first place. Ended up going 6-0 with the deck, and I've been kind of liking Vegito. I think Blue's kind of in the spot where there's a lot of different leaders that are viable, in particular with mostly the same package, but this build is running more of like I would say the traditional package for Vegito, with the inclusion of the new cards of like the 2-drop Vegeta into the 3-drop Goku with the CU, right? We know this combo, right? This is the combo for this deck in general, but it's still really effective, especially since we are a 40k leader on the backside, being able to attack, and your opponents have to like really respect what this card can do in a lot of ways. It's once you go down to 2, it's very easy for this deck to just kind of dump a lot of advantage and to go for it. We are playing copies of like Vegito as well to help you get to these situations, and it's just like a really strong deck, I think, in these certain situations too. So I don't have a lot to say about it. This is the build though from Luke for their finish here, and I think that it's in a really good spot for this meta. I know that also like Zamasu people have been playing, but I don't think anyone really brought it to this event. I know that like Star Deck Vegeta is still in a really good spot and still runs this same kind of package. The only issue with this deck is that, you know, you can kind of mill out your super combos. We've all have it happen at least once if you've been playing this deck for a while, which feels pretty bad. But we do kind of run 8 copies of them with the Savior of the World too. So I think that's something that's important for a deck like this as well. So I don't have much more to say. This is the build, though, from Luke, and congratulations for their first place with Vegito. Next up, we've got our second place list. So this is Jordan's version of Majin Buu Evil, and I know a lot of people probably already have opinions on this deck, mostly because it's been so present on the ladder, at least from my own experience right now. It is pretty fast. It has a lot of advantage gain for how it plays, and it's really obnoxious to answer in a lot of ways. So biggest interaction I think a lot of people are aware of is like this 3-drop Majin Buu is really good at being able to like get some hand destruction with Babidi, making your opponent discard 2, and just kind of punishing them for drawing too much is really nice for what it is. 3-drop Janemba has been really good for not only awakening but getting some like good interactions in the early game, and also being a 25k is pretty brutal in a lot of ways. We do also have the Majin Buu Kid, the Son Goku. Most people have switched to Hyper Beam instead of using the other one for the Majin archetype, so I think this one is really good. Just the fact that it draws no matter what is probably one of the better things for a deck like this. We are playing 2 copies of the Frieza Secret Rare, which I think is fine. There are some times we're playing against Jiren. I think Jiren has been a little bit more popular lately, and we'll talk about it when we get to it, but this deck being able to have an out to that is good. But sometimes like our best turn 4 play is just to play this out because it just to stay, you know, gets to stay on the board for most of the game afterwards. we have been seeing like previously some people put like 3-drop Majin Buu with the same kind of idea, since it's a a sticky card with barrier that's hard to interact with. This freezes kind of in the same way, and then we have our Majin Buu kid as our top end as well. So generally speaking, I've been seeing this deck do very well. It's you have to play against it very specifically. I will say spoilers in the finals. The one of the best cards was the 4-drop Vegito, being able to prevent like their end game combo of like Majin Buu kid with Majin Buu kid. That just stops the like this deck is really good at punishing decks at 3 life. But if you can attack with any 3-drops, that does make a big difference. So only thing I'll say is that some people have been playing, instead of like this 3-drop Majin Buu, like just the 4-drop vanilla, since you can play it off your Majin Buu kid and you can still attack with it, which I do think is impactful as well. So this is the build there from Jordan, and congratulations for their second place finish with the Majin Buu Evil. The next up, we've got Son Goku Mini Daima, and I did bring up all 3 decks from the top 8. So we do have Simon, Lamb's, as well as Josh's builds of it here. And this is the deck that I've been playing probably the most currently. I do think it's very strong. It has not, it doesn't have a lot of weaknesses, and there's a lot of ways for you to take advantage of some situations. Specifically, I think the best way to play this, and we see this in Jordan's build, and this is, or sorry, in Simon's build. This is one of the like this. I play this build almost verbatim for quite a bit, and one of my favorite things about it is that this Tournament Power Arena, I feel, is so good in this format right now, since we're kind of a little bit more of in a grindy session instead of like being like, no real super duper aggressive decks right now compared to where we've been previously. And it just means like you can guarantee get to the late game, which means you can drop a couple copies of the 6-drop Goku. This has been very strong right now, especially with the idea that our Son Goku Mini is really good at trading with other cards, like the Awaken effect, being able to give that minus 5k makes things like incrementally better, and I think this leader is just better than the FB05 Goku. And then lastly, the Glorio. This is like one of the best end game cards in the game right now by itself, right? Like the fact that we can play this, it becomes a 30k with our leader effect, and we give it a Marcerita, it becomes a 45, a 40k that can attack twice against like normally a 15k leader, or even if we're playing against Jiren, like 40 twice on a 20k leader is still really, really good in its own way. So I think that's really impactful. That helps the deck out a lot. And the last thing is that like this card has been like mildly good. I kind of am off the card in my own builds currently, but this is better than I thought it would be. And there's some decks where like I can't do anything. It's like obnoxious. It just stays on board. Like blue can bounce it, sure, but like green kind of has to respect it. Black has to respect it. Yellow kind of has to respect it as well. And that kind of adds up throughout the game, so I do like the addition of that one. So other than that, I think this deck is in a really good spot. So, this is the build from Simon, but we also have 2 other builds that just exist too. So we have Lamb's build, which is, I'd say, like a little bit more aggressive leaning. We're not playing the arena, but we are playing like a bunch of draw cards with the Roshi, Piccolo, and Son Goten Mini. So 12 cantrips, which is quite a bit. And then we just try to get to the late game and get some more removal, which is really nice. We're not playing any copies of 4-drop Jiren, which I think is fine. But again, we are having this top end, and we don't really run any bricks, right? The only bricks that we run in this build of it is the Gloria, which is fine because again, this is our good end game, and I think that's impactful. And the Son Goku, so both these just being like our like end game finishers with the Son Goku 6-drop, like that's fine. Like you are fine with this kind of variety. Sometimes I feel like, I find too much bricks in the builds like this one, since, I have to play the Jiren, the Glorio, the Tournament Power Arena, right? It does start to add up a little bit, but there's that. And then lastly, we do also have Josh's build here, which is kind of like a bit of a more of like the Tournament Power Arena one, right? But does kind of like meld between the 2 different builds. We are playing like the Tamagami number 3. We're also playing the Pansy, which I really want to play this card, and it's not bad. The fact that it doesn't have any combo, though, is pretty tough in a deck when we are kind of approaching a lot of non-combo in a lot of situations. We also do have like the Topo, which I haven't seen this card sleeved up ever in person, but this does have some good trade potential, right? When attacking, you can discard 1 to give something minus 25k, and when KO to get to draw 2. A lot of decks can bypass this destruction, though, right, and just bottom deck it, or if you're playing in the red mirror, you can just put its power to 0 and stuff. But it's an interesting card, and I think like it can be better than Jiren in some ways with its weird protection. But I do kind of, and the fact that you can get rid of a 30k with our leader effect is good. The discard can be sometimes expensive, but other times your opponent just kind of has to respect this card as well. So in general, I'm happy to see that, even though like 3 copies of this topped in the top 16. They're wildly different builds, and they're not wildly different. They're different builds with their tech options, right? And there's different ways to build within the same leader, and I think that's really interesting. So this is Simon Lamb's and Josh's build. Congratulations for their top 8s with the Son Goku Mini Daima from the starter deck. All right, next up we've got Aandroidd 17. So this is Steven's version of the build, and this deck's been around for a while. I would say this is a more aggressive leaning version of this, specifically because we are running not only the Nappa from FB04, but also we're playing the Son Goku from FB05. So clearly this has been a really strong deck or card in the green Goku, since we can get down to 2 life. But with the introduction of the Murray, which is not only a 10k, but the fact that this can put us down to 2 lives to be able to play our Son Goku is really, really good. So like, even like, let's say this is like a 4-drop 45k, so if we play Murray and Son Goku, which technically makes it like a 4-drop, like 55k if we use Murray as a combo. This is just like a really good end game scenario, which I think is just better than the Aandroidd 17-18 that we normally see, kind of as the double strike for the deck. So again, but this is very aggressive leaning. We only play 2 copies of Broly BR. Sometimes, like, even playing this for 7, I think we're really okay with, because our opponent has to answer it. And then if they don't, like, we get to do the 45k double strike again. We are playing Gigantic Meteor. We're playing copies of Earth Destroying Blow and also Warm Greeting. So being able to get rid of cards like Jiren and others, and also just get like a card draw for 2 if we need to in some situations. I think this build is pretty successful at what it does, and then clearly just takes advantage of like this 4-drop Aandroidd 17-18. What I generally say about this deck is that if you're able to find 2 of these on like your 4th turn and be able to play them back to back to be able to ramp to 8, you kind of win a lot of scenarios. I feel like it's just very, very good in this format currently. So I don't have much more to say. We've been seeing Aandroidd 17, but it's cool to see it still like add some new cards from FB05 and kind of adapt to the format. And again, this is Steven's build with the deck. And then next up we've got Jiren. So this is Aaryn's version of it, and I've been really surprised about how present Jiren is in this meta. I started off with this meta thinking that it kind of got outclassed. Biggest kind of thing was that we do have like the 4-drop Frieza, which is a great way for yellow to get rid of 4-drop Jiren, which didn't exist either for this one. Also, they only ran 4 super combos. I'll fix that in the thing. But yeah, this is a very, very strong build from Jiren, being able to just be really strong for still being able to persist in this meta. And I think one of the biggest issues is that like, the removal is very good. We have a lot of good top end cards. We already talked about Son Goku, but we're also playing the 6-drop Jiren from FB04. So permanent, this can't be removed from battle areas by your opponent's skills. And then on play, if your leader has Pride Troopers, it is special traits. Your opponent's life is at 2 or more. You take 1 damage, and then you get to deal 1 damage to your opponent. So it essentially turns you into a draw 2, and then also deal 1, which burn damage is pretty strong in this game. But yeah, red just does have like a toolbox of removal and being able to answer stuff. If your opponent doesn't have their out to 4-drop Jiren, this gains you a lot of value. We were also playing like 4-drop Topo, which is surprising. You take 1 damage if leader is awakened, now the top card from your deck to your life. So this either can self-awaken, which is great as a 30k, or the fact that it lets you draw 2 cards with Jiren is pretty good too. These are kind of like this was like released in FB05 or 4, and like, oh, Jiren's gonna be great. And then not a lot of decks use this or the 6-drop, so it's interesting to see them find a little bit of success in this meta. And then that's just kind of generally it for this one. I don't know, like this is just kind of another flavor of like red removal. I do like Daima a little bit more than Jiren, but I respect what this deck can do, and I think this is really in a response for how good that like yellow Majin Buu has been. It's traditionally in the ladder right now, but I do think Jiren is still popular, which again was surprising. I thought this deck was just out of the format. I thought yellow would be a little bit more present, and because of that, with everyone playing Frieza, you just didn't have time to play your 4-drop Jiren. But with that not being the case right now, I think this deck is still pretty cemented in this format. So this is Aaryn's version of the build. Congratulations for their finish with Jiren. And the next up, we've got Son Goku. So this is the build here from Mike, who was able to get a top 8 with the Son Goku. And this leader did win our previous event as well. And this has been a tough nut to crack for me personally of what's the best way to build this deck. I think there's different ways to build it as well. Like obviously playing like the Planet Namek stuff makes sense. Being able to have your recursion as well with copies of like Hercule as well as Cell Jr. to get some of your better cards back to your hand. you are also running like the instant Kamehameha, which I do like this card in the fact that like once we get to a point late game that we really don't care about charging energy or how much energy we have. So being able to run this for like a 15k for almost no cost is really nice, and I do like that. We do have the like Destructo Disc as well. We have Dr. Brief Spaceship at 4 copies and 2 copies of full power. We've got our Krillin, we've got the rest of our combo, and it's just kind of like a pile of cards in green. Like it's kind of like on the surface, this deck looks like it's a really aggressive deck, right? And I think people are like, oh, this is like you just go face, you just try to push for game, and then have drop your 45k double. But it's not quite that easy. I find like I feel like the best way to play this deck is kind of like a grindy mid range deck where you just try to like gain a lot of advantage. You poke your opponent a lot throughout the turns. You're able to kind of clear their board pretty successfully with copies of like Sun Gohan Youth in your full power. And then once you get to a comfortable spot, you use your Goku 7-drop to really hit them. So it's, you know, you can play this deck and be really aggressive with it. Sometimes that works if your opponent has like a slow start, but you also can burn out of your resources a lot of the time, I find, if you do play that route. So being able to just have like this recursion, be really obnoxious, try to push for a lot of pressure, use cards like Chaozu to make it so your opponent can't attack with their better cards at the end of their turn. And I think all that's really strong. But I don't know, I find like there's just like this weird way to play this. There's different ways to do so, and I'd be curious, like, and this deck is still evolving, which I think is really cool for this meta. So I don't have much more to say, but congratulations to Mike for their copy of Goku in the top 8. And then next up, we've got, this is outside of the top 8, but we've got Janemba. So this is Sean's version of the deck. And this deck's been like a little bit underrated, I feel, or like overrated, I think, for this meta, right? I think most people thought this was the best deck in this format on release, and I don't blame them. And I was also in that boat because if we look at all the support cards that Yellow got, there's just amazing cards, right? We already talked about 4-drop Frieza, which we're only playing at 1 copy in this build, and I don't even think that's too incorrect at this point, just because I find like, oh, we find it too often. It's a 0 cost. Like, we need to establish 1 sometimes throughout the game, but sometimes like the fact that this is like 6 energy to do what it does is a little bit expensive when we're not doing that much other things. So I do find like sometimes this card can carry, but sometimes it's a little bit too slow and expensive still, which is wild to me that happens, but it's the truth. We also do have like Bio Broly, which this card has been fantastic, being able to just be a 35k and draw a card and everything. This can like replace your leader draw that you're missing a lot of the time. Most people I see playing Janemba with some success are playing like a bit of the Majin Buu package. We're only playing one of the 3-drop, which I thought was like a little bit curious, especially since we are playing so many 1-drops in the Psyche Demon, the Yamu, and the Lord Jaguar as well, which again I thought was surprising. We are playing this, so switch this card in a battle area to rest mode, add to 1 non-Lord Jaguar card with cost 3 or less and Jaguar Island from your special traits to your hand. So this lets you just get your Bio Broly, so it lets you add a 10-drop, which is fine. I do like being able to play this and then use it with like Majin Buu Evil to get like the draw and discard. So that sometimes is worth it, I find, but only having 1 copy of this does make a difference. It does also let us get the Fierce Hyper Beam, which again, this is strong, I think, in a lot of formats and in a lot of decks, just being able to stun what they have. And then our top end is also like Golden Frieza, which I see some people playing this. I haven't seen this as often. I think most people have been playing more like the Majin Buu stuff, but this does pressure a lot of damage, right? The fact that we get that stun is really impactful, and I think that's fine for what this deck wants to do. So generally speaking, I do want to test more of this deck personally. I haven't been able to jump back into it. I think Janemba has a lot of potential to be good, but the way you have to build it is really specific, and sometimes you have these situations where you just kind of get blown out with aggro a lot of time. But if you play like this kind of patience game and just get to the end game very consistently, I can definitely see Janemba be very strong. In that case, it's just like it's a weird balance that I haven't figured out personally, and I've been interested to see every time like a Janemba deck does well, to see how the build looks as well. So this is the build here from Sean, and congratulations with their finish with Jiren, or sorry, with Janemba. Sorry. The next up we've got Beerus. So this is the build here from Andy, and this is like a set 4 build through and through, right? We don't run any new cards. Not that I think like Red didn't really have great generic cards, I think, in the set. Like the Glorio's been really good for Diamond leaders, but we are not a Diamond leader in this Beerus. But this old reliable does do some work, right? This deck went 4-2. 3-drop Beerus into 5-drop Beerus is still very strong. Some decks just have to lose their value for it. I do think like with blue being very popular right now, red does have a chance to punish them because of the amount of removal that Beerus has access to. We still are kind of upset this is a 20k crit leader in this format, just because sometimes we want that card draw. And if we're playing against Majin Buu, that additional card destruction feels really bad when we're not cycling in the beginning of it. And I think that is something that's impactful. So I do think it's a little bit interesting that we're not playing Shin, mostly because we are, I feel, very dependent on finding our 3-drop Beerus into our 5-drop Beerus in a lot of matchups. So not having like a searcher for that specifically does feel a little bit incorrect, but I do think that this is a still super strong build. I think Beerus is one of the best decks in the FB04 format. So even without any changes, I think it can still thrive in the FB05 format. And this is the build here from Andy. So again, congratulations for their top 16 with Beerus. And then next up, you've got Son Goku FB03. This is Paul's version of the build. And honestly, I don't have a lot to say about this. You guys know what this looks like. There's not diversity in building for this deck in specific, which, you know what, considering how much diversity there is everywhere else, I think that's fine. I think most people are on specifically the Great Saiyaman 2 package for this deck, which is really impactful, being able to play out your 3-drop. We're also playing additional copies of 2-drop Videl, which is a 10k that we can play off for a 1-drop if we need to get that cycle. And then our top end is also the 6-drop Vegito. So this card has been strong, especially in the new Vegito leader, because you can pretty consistently make this a 50k on the second swing, I find. So that does help you close out games if you need to. And has like some great removal against some certain things. So I think all that is very good. We are playing a 53 card list, which I thought was also interesting, which means like the 2 copies of this Videl and 1 copy of this Vegito kind of add that extra 3 for the 53. But I think that is also kind of nice in the fact that it does dilute the cards that don't have Saiyan City, right? The fact that we have the cards that don't have Saiyan City are what? Pilaf, our super combo, and the Vegito. So 10 cards, so a little bit under 20% is that inclusion there, which I think is fine. So I don't know. I think this deck is good. I've been having a personal issue playing against it, which just because it just is so grindy. It's just so like monotonous and kind of linear at times, but it's very good. It's you do have to be awake at the wheel to play it as well, and I think it's very strong in this format still. So this is the build from Paul, and congratulations for their top 16 with Goku. Next up, you've got the Son Goku Mini from FB05. And personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this leader. I definitely prefer the FS06 starter leader for this Goku, but there are some situations where this one is better. I think the biggest issue is that like the plus 10k you get is not generic. It's only for Daima cards, which is great in some situations, but sometimes like if my opponent's able to clear my board or I don't have any Daima cards, it doesn't really do that much, right? The fact that the star deck leader that gives like the generic +5 and -5, no matter what, I think is very, very strong in this, but it does mean like cards like Son Goku Daima from the starter deck are also Glorio gets to hit a little bit harder because of that. So specifically for Glorio to be a 35k base leader or card against a 15k base leader, if you give the -5, is very strong. It means it's a super combo plus, which is really impactful. And I do think that's something that helps out the deck too. So we are also playing 3 copies of It's Over, which I've been considering playing in my starter deck Goku as well. But I think it's better in this build since it's really easy for us to make a 30k. For example, we could have like a 2-drop Pansy out, and then we can play this for 2. And so for 4, we're able to do that. Which generically, it's a little bit tougher for like Daima Goku from the starter deck to do so because we're only giving +5. So it has to be like a base 25 and then using It's Over, which I don't think we can only really do that from 5 from like an empty board, which is kind of different. So we are also playing like Son Gohan Adolescence. We're also playing the promo Vegeta. Being able to give something -15k on play is really strong for this. And I have been considering playing this for the Daima Goku too, but I haven't committed to it quite yet. And then again, our top end and 6-drop Goku, if we're able to get to a certain spot, does help you in a lot of situations. So not much more to say, but congratulations to Clay for their finish with the FB05 Goku Mini. And then next up, we've got Gogeta, which we haven't really talked about any black decks really in this format, which it's surprising to see that this deck has been one of the less popular, at least, or less results driven one for this meta. I mean, Gogeta was the second most popular leader in this format for this event, and it only got one in the top 16. So I do think that this deck is strong. I've talked about Gogeta for a while, but there are some kind of fundamental issues with it, mostly because like I feel like it's just like a little bit undertuned, not doing anything on the awakening, and then like no draw or anything, and then only being like a 20k on the backside when I think a lot of other leaders could. This could definitely be like a 25k, or even like, you know, when attacking, if you have a marker, make it a 30k. You know, your turn. I think something like that would have been a little bit more flavorful and help this deck in some spots where you just kind of lose out on value towards the end of the game, which kind of feels bad. So I've played a build very similar to this, and I do think that you can get to a spot where you can set up for it. But the fact that like most of the cards from this new set were pretty rough, I don't feel like the Another World stuff is really worth running a whole deck for it right now. And because of that, then you're just playing the Son Goku GT 4-drop deck, right? Which is still good, but you know, it's very generic for a lot of leaders. But I think the one trick is running a little bit thin in, you know, this format. You know, 3 sets later, Son Goku GT can only do so many things, and there's so many decks that can remove it. So I do think the one big thing is that this Trunks GT is very strong, and the fact that we can continually generate energy markers, so the protection this offers is a lot better, I think, in this format specifically, and that does help this deck. And I think like the best way to play this is that we just build a board mid game. We make it so our opponent can't really answer us. This 4-drop Glorio is still really good because on curve, if you play it for 2 energy, most decks don't really have a great way to answer it. And then once you start playing, like once you're like awakened and you can start pinging your opponent consistently, being able to like just attack them and then use the rest of our energy to like stun the board, remove the board, etc., helps out a lot. So anyways, this is Jacob's version of the build. Congratulations for their X2 finish. And lastly, it is a bubble deck, but we've got Miguel's version of Baby Vegeta, which this deck is you know, still I think very strong in this format. It was one of the better decks in the end of FB04, and we did get a couple of support cards. Specifically, we did get the Bulma GT, which this is really good. The fact that we have like another Awakener, and the fact that, you know, we can do some things where we can like, you know, use the effect to take a card from our left to our hand, switch to rest mode to draw a card, and then we can do a 10k is really good, right? Like the fact that it's kind of like a you know, 2 energy, draw 1 plus 10k is really strong in a lot of scenarios, especially because we can cheat it out with cards like our grade 8 baby as well. So I do like the fact that we're leaning more into the Machine Immune package, but we are still running the Goku GT. We are also playing the Ultimate Sparking, which I think this card is really good, specifically against, you know, making it so like yellow can't do their combo play. There's a lot of different decks that just fall victim to this card if you are able to pass with this one energy marker open. I think my biggest issue though with it is that it's really tough to sometimes you have to play like a Para Bros, and then you can't have, you know, use both of them in the same kind of thing because you can only generate 1 energy marker sometimes. But I do think Ultimate Sparking is great, and there are some scenarios where it can win you the game, or in the very least not let you lose the game in that turn. So I don't have much more to say. I think that Baby Vegeta is in an interesting spot right now. I think the deck is still good, but I don't know. I think that black specifically might be one of the worst colors in the game right now, which was surprising to me. I thought it was definitely going to be red, but it's been very strong on the red side with, you know, the implementation of like the Star Deck Daima Goku leader and some others, and Jiren just still being a threat in general too. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, if you guys want any of the deck lists, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events, which is linked in the description, and I'm looking forward to the continued evolution of this meta in this card game. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it. Damn it.